got a bright light in my face. So let me just turn off the video too.
All right.
Where are we? Video off. There we go. Okay, terrific. Well, it's a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you very much for making the time to chat about the ApeSDK and the integrations that you're looking to do with Unreal, or basically anything. I mean, I'd just be, Unity would be a good start, Unreal would be a good start, whatever you're willing to, work on, I'm more than happy with.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. I really like these life simulation. In particular, I always loved Creatures. When
Certainly.
I played Creatures 3 a lot, and it even inspired my PhD. So
Very good. No, I'm as you might. Did you hear the conversation I had with Steve Grand last year?
not yet. I'm still catching up.
So the conversation I had with him last year, he said one of his greatest joys is hearing from people that they did their PhDs because of Creatures. So I'm one of the few people that's kind of maintained contact with Steve Grand for about 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
I'm probably like, I don't know. It was funny because we were supposed to appear on BBC Radio 4 together, and he volunteered a gentleman called Rick Colasanti, and Rick and I had a conversation for about 12 minutes. Probably one of the shortest podcasts I've ever recorded. And then Steve and I started properly formally talking, I don't know, probably 2010 we actually started conversing. And I've checked back in with him pretty well every 5 or 6 years. But this, because of the work that he's doing currently, I've really wanted to check back in with him this year. So I've emailed him, and my hope is that he'll be on a future videocast even, so he can show what he's working on currently. Because I think certainly the nature of his work has, straddled, as he likes to say, sometimes 4 decades of work. So he really has had an amazing impact on a lot of people. So when you said that you were a Steve Grand devotee, I thought, well, immediately the ApeSDK, not that in any way paying homage to Steve's work, because ironically, when the Barreto 2 conference came out, there was a magazine that was looking to fly me to Cambridge because they just wanted to see me and Steve in a room together doing an interview. But yeah, it's a funny thing because Steve and my lives have just kind of intertwined. I mean, we both live, he probably lives, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 hours drive away from me. I live in Nevada. He lives in Arizona. We've never actually met physically, though. That's the funny thing. Like we have these very passionate, detailed phone conversations every how many years, and we both kind of always agree we've got to talk more frequently. We've got to, but neither of us have ever met each other. So it's one of these funny things where we just exist in an electronic form, just communicating between the two of us. But yeah, Steve is just one of these kind of visionary people. I always joke with him because all his fans call him a capital S scientist. And I've always thought of myself as a capital H hobbyist in my work. Like, I've never really thought that my stuff would actually bridge into science, but a lot of it actually has, which is quite fascinating about doing the stuff that I've done. Is a lot of the stuff is still, relevant, contemporary. I mean, you've had a look at some of the stuff. You've looked at the origin of mind. You've looked at some of the stuff that I've written. So, I think it's still highly applicable to the stuff that, is currently being discussed. It's just, history is a very funny thing. I think a lot of people have this view that history is just well written and well understood. Even within my lifetime, I've seen history. I mean, Steve Grand, for example, you would think everyone on the Artificial Life, on the Discord servers, would know immediately about Steve Grand and be able to answer your question immediately. you think that was a thing, that people who were there would at least, I mean, it's like Margaret, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Margaret A. Bowden, but Margaret A. Bowden wrote The Philosophy of Artificial Life in 1996. Have you ever read The Philosophy of Artificial Life?
I heard about it, but I haven't read it yet.
It's an amazing book. I mean, basically, for me, it was basically everything I needed to work on what was then called, my project has gone through 3 names. It was originally called the Nirvana Project, then it was called Noble Ape, and then it became known as the ApeSDK. And at each time I've had to change the name because a wealthy individual has just wanted the name, which is a very, very strange situation. I mean, the most recent one with Noble Ape, I thought, I'm never changing the name of this project ever again. I've done it for 20 years under the name Noble Ape. I'm not changing the name of the project ever again. And yet there was a wealthy individual, and if you Google Noble Ape, you get to see basically what they wanted to do with the name.
Is it a music artist? Because when I Googled it, that's like one of the first things that popped up.
Well, ironically, I've got music under the name Noble Ape as well. So, yes, it could. Who knows? Who knows the many permutations of what has happened to Noble Ape since I was expunged from Wikipedia in 2019. I'd already changed the name of the project to the Ape SDK, but this wealthy individual was just so impassioned about getting this whole thing. Except I still have nobleape.com. He wasn't able to get nobleape.com. So I still maintain the domain name as a kind of joke. And there's a what I call a play on nobleape.com, which is the last conversation I had with academics in 2012 at Michigan State University.
Right.
And that was just a fascinating opportunity, because literally all those academics, I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen nobleape.com, but all those academics were so completely impassioned and powered by the stuff I was talking about. Not one of them ever got in contact with me after that conversation. So it was a really strange interaction based on just where everything was coming together with A-Life, intersecting with science, intersecting with a whole bunch of different things. Because Michigan State University has had a long-standing, there are a few universities in the US that I recommend with regards to A-Life. And Michigan State is certainly one of them. Anyway, you have questions for me. Let's talk more about your questions for me as opposed to the history of A-Life.
Yeah. So the main reason why I wanted to schedule this call is I want to really understand what your goal is for the port, and and as a follow-up, I already have some ideas on how to approach this, and I wanted to run them by you.
Most certainly. So there's a 3D landscape and a 3D color scheme that's already embedded in the landscape. I'm not sure if you've gotten that far with regards to, because I wrote the 3D graphics engine myself.
Right.
So I basically, in video it's called Mux, but I interleave the color information and the height information of the landscape, which you can just decouple if you want to decouple. In addition to that, there's this text window that enables you to see the Noble Ape name interaction. Sorry, I'll call them Noble Apes. I'm talking amongst friends. Let me call them Noble Apes. The Noble Ape interactions have with other Noble Apes. So that has their name primarily. They have double barrel surnames because they're Noble Apes, funnily enough. And you can click on those and you switch immediately to be that Noble Ape. So that's some functionality that's pretty cool. The landscape itself, I think, lends itself very heavily to visualization. So it's two combined interfaces, really. One is the landscape and environment with water, and you can add vegetation and stuff like that. All the biology is modeled in the simulation as well. So if you want to add vegetation or fractal trees or whatever you want to add, all that is through the simulation as well. I can explain how to get into that at a later discussion, because I think we only have an hour to talk.
Right. Sorry, let me just, if I share my screen, so at least I can visualize. So I open one of the videos I got on one of your YouTube channels, and then you can walk me through what I'm looking at. Because I don't think the Windows part is usable yet.
No, it's not. It's not for the text selection. That's only on the Mac version, unfortunately.
Right.
So
Peter
ahead. Is very close with regards to the three windows, but he's not quite there yet. So let's move back from three windows and just talk about the landscape visualization specifically.
Let me see. Give me 1 second.
No problem. I might move this actually to my big monitor so I can actually see it better.
All right. You see what I'm seeing?
Just a second. Yes. Okay. So here we have the three visualization windows that I was describing. One is the landscape, one is the map, and one is the text interaction of the Noble Apes.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you were saying that you wrote the graphics rendering code for the landscape and the map, and that's one of the things you wanted to incorporate on the
That's
the Unreal.
The map is just a blitter. So basically, you just split out the map values. The landscape has more detail to it because obviously it's underlying 3D values that I'm mapping to my own visualization for that specifically.
Right. Okay. Because yeah, I mean, I don't work that much with computer graphics. I mean, I know a little, both in like using OpenGL experiments and also using Unreal. So I can see how using like 3D meshes could. Not sure if it'll be the exact same thing or.
It's registered down to individual points. So what you have is basically a two-dimensional array, which is the points of both the color and the height information.
Right.
And so, it takes those two 2D arrays, combines them together, and then puts them into the algorithm.
Right. Yeah. So in theory, I could have like a terrain mesh and just do the same.
Perfect.
Just
exactly the same.
Just
and you could use the color map, or you could use your own color map. It's not material.
Yeah. At least the way I see it would be like terrain mesh, adjust the height levels the same way you would do with a height map, or even have a height map actually move the values onto a texture and then have it applied.
Perfect. That works really well too, because I've done that with OpenGL historically, and that works really well as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it. And then the map you mentioned is just like a 2D representation of the actual.
And it's actually clickable and selectable, at least on the Mac version. The Windows version is a bit buggy with regards to the mouse interactions. But on the Mac version, you can literally click the individual apes, and that immediately zooms them in. Not zooms them in, but it makes them larger, more colored dots. And you can see all the apes that the other apes see as well. So you have basically line of sight information that's also provided through that map.
Right. And then you have the third window, which is the narrative engine, right?
Okay. Basically, it's a bunch of stuff that was cobbled together by Bob Mottram. And I think it has the narrative engine without question. It also has a bunch of underlying factors. You can see that the ape is finding friends and sleeping at the same time. So probably just waking up and finding friends as the first wake up step. And then it's a female ape. It tells you how many days old it is, its height. It's on a score, so it's very young, so it's got a 0 on a score. The part of the body that it's thinking about, it's aware of its head currently. So there's a whole bunch of additional information through that that might be worthy of capturing too.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The narrative part might need a little bit of work on my part, because Unreal has its own way of dealing with both strings and console outputs.
Without question, it generates that anyway. It generates basically a raw string output, which I'm just rendering in that window. So you can, once Peter is done with the lock issue with regards to actually rendering the narrative engine, I think basically you'll be in good place just to take the text immediately.
Right. I'm thinking, would it be worth taking the text or the values that generate the text? Because
I think taking the text at this stage, and then we can look at generating values that make the text, because there are additional information. Like there's actually like an active link characteristic to it. So when you have the ape's names put out, they're in a different color that you can actively select and then switch to that ape. So there's additional nutritional information basically in the text that presented out. It basically has hyperlinks built into it.
Sorry, say that again, the last part?
So the text has hyperlinks built into it. It has this notion of names that you can click on and then move to the next ape. So it's like there's a hyperlink for, or a hyperlink is probably old terminology.
No, I know what a hyperlink is.
So, but there's a hyperlink that you can click on to move to the next ape immediately.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Yeah, and then you also want to keep like other features that the simulation has, like the ability to run scripts and things like that.
That's a secondary thing. I mean, my view is that just getting the simulation out, just 3 windows rendered in Unreal, is just such a huge breakthrough, and immediately makes it accessible for a bunch of additional developers that might be interested in doing it. Like, for example, I showed you the video of Polyworld. Polyworld is basically the main, not even competitor. It was not even inspirational with regards to my development of the ApeSDK
Right.
It was just something that I always looked at and thought, it'd be really cool if I got something like Polyworld. So I've always been trying to aim for a Polyworld level of graphics. And Polyworld, as you might have seen, is still very primitive graphics. Like the actual creatures, I think they're called sea monkeys in Polyworld, the underlying monkey-like creatures.
Right.
They are just cubes that float through the landscape. So my view is that even getting to that level of detail in this environment would just be amazing to me. I mean, that to me would be like, wow, I've gotten to a Polyworld level using, Unreal, using all these technologies. I should have gotten out my books that I have associated with actually doing this port, because I've been trying to do this. I've been trying to crack this for at least a decade, more than a decade, actually. I was talking about it in 2010, I think, if you listen to the old Barreto audio, just about how to get real-time 3D visualization properly done, not my algorithm,
Right.
but actually being done with the existing algorithm. Anyway, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Please continue.
No. This is for me to listen to you rather than you listen to me. Right. No, just thinking, because I'll need to interface the way you set up coordinates and your data structures. I look into them, and I'll need to bridge them between Unreal and
certainly, because they're
simulation.
two-dimensional fundamentally, plus a third dimension as you get to them. So they're two-dimensional. The notion of caves and those kind of strange water structures that go underground and all that kind of stuff isn't actually in there. It literally is just two-dimensional geometry with a height map added to it, as it
Right.
is currently. So yeah, that shouldn't be too complicated.
Yeah. Well, one of the main differences probably is that with Unreal, you don't have 3 windows. You can have just one window and then section
Certainly,
the window.
that would be a different thing without question.
Yeah. Right. Okay. In terms of like the approach, since we're using, at least for the time being, a DLL compiled from the SDK, I get the impression I'm gonna need to change things a bit, in the sense that some of the functions need to be exposed.
Without question. And I think that's all very doable. And just as you need to expose stuff, work with me and Peter, and we'll make sure that they're exposed for you. I think almost we need to create like a DLL version of the ApeSDK, which is just exclusively for your use. Maybe be used for the Windows version too, potentially. But I think certainly exposing whatever you need from the ApeSDK specifically, I'm more than happy. I mean, literally, you can use all the header files as they exist currently, or you can make a subset of that, or do whatever you want to do. No issue.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I have to take a deeper dive into the source code, but at least from what I saw, some things will need to be exposed, and we might have to do like a more bare bone version of the simulation cycle function, because I noticed that you run the steps and you count the steps, the steps as in like how many ticks and time frames and stuff like that. If
seconds, yep. Ideally, yep.
But Unreal already keeps track of that on the engine main loops.
Yeah.
So
it shouldn't be time consuming though. I don't think that's the time consuming part. The part is the underlying cognitive simulation and getting those components. They're going to be the time consuming part. There's a cognitive simulation which actually is even turned off in this version, which is very processor intensive. That was basically what Apple and Intel optimized. So that's turned off in this version, thankfully. It does add some interesting visualization because you get to see the node blades thinking. Like you get to see when they're dreaming and when they're... So I think it's brain underscore on. Right. In the source code, you can turn the brain back on and actually see that. But I think the actual, let's check what the tick count is, let's show the frames per second, that kind of stuff can easily be turned off. So no issue.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it is inbuilt in some of the structures, but that's only because how the structures are exposed, basically.
One thing I did notice regarding the IBM, or at least from what I read on one of the papers you sent me, is that they used in Trin6, or was that Apple? No, I think it was IBM, or was that Intel?
It was Intel. It was Intel.
Okay, okay.
It's not. None of that code is present in the current source code.
Okay, okay.
The source code is basically locked in. About when I wrote The Origin of Mind, it's basically locked in with Bob. Although I've removed some of Bob Mottram's code, it's pretty well locked in with what's in Origin of Mind. Back in 2013. So yeah, the Apple and Intel stuff was fascinating at the time, but it now is completely dated and impossible to maintain. So don't even worry about that.
Okay, because I was gonna say that Unreal supports wrappers for Intrinsics, if I'm not mistaken. So
I wouldn't worry about that at this stage.
Okay. Right. Okay, so in terms of functionality, we're talking about you being able to, like, how do I say this? Move around the landscape, rotate as if you have like a camera pointing, as in a 3D game, right?
As if your view is that of the noble ape, specifically on the ground, looking out landscape-wise, which should be relatively easy to do. I'd just implement what's shown currently as a start, and then let's move to the idea of actually being on the ground, surrounded by other noble apes and other creatures and this kind of stuff. Don't worry about that at this stage.
Right. No, let me just write this down. So yeah, stage 1 would be to move around the landscape the same way you have right now, and then the second stage would be move in the perspective of a noble ape.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you. And that way you can actually have these drop downs become almost like windows in a strange simulation that noble ape is like almost like a Terminator-like character, that they have this they have the map information brought up, they have their interactions with other apes, they can immediately click on other apes and then become those other apes. I mean, it is very much a kind of Terminator-esque like scenario. Or I don't even know whether Dune got into this in any degree of depth, but that kind of perspective, basically.
Right. Okay. And in terms of the map, you just click on the map and you just teleport there.
No, you click on an existing ape that's on the map and you immediately go to where that ape is.
Okay.
I'm also recording this for your benefit as well, so you'll have access to the video audio portion of this when we're done.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. But I'm used to writing things down.
Oh, believe me, I am too. I am too. I've got pens and engineering notebooks dotted around me.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I think this is everything I need at the moment to understand. Just writing down some schematics here. So I can show you right now the project, but it's super bare bones. You'll probably
why don't we just agree to talk at another time about this? I mean, you've downloaded a lot of information from me today.
Right.
I mean, if you want to show me, show me. I'm not fighting you showing me, but I'm just saying, if you feel you need to spend time doing some stuff, don't feel obligated today. Or show me. It's your call.
No. Okay. In that case, I'll just ask a question from the brain simulation itself. At least I didn't quite understand from reading the papers, or maybe I missed it because since I've been doing this spare time and
part time. Yeah, without question.
I didn't quite get. So okay. So what I understood was you have this some things akin to bacteria growth in an agar environment. It works kind of like a 3D cellular automata, and information is propagated from like one cell to another, depending on.
You have sensors and actuators that are embedded in the cells, and basically that goes into the cognitive simulation accordingly.
Yeah, that's the part I didn't quite get, is how.
So there's a bytecode, and there are a bunch of points in the cognitive simulation that actually read from it, from the sensor and actuator points, and that just goes into byte. It's not noise. It's slightly better than noise, but it just gives information back to the Noble Apes that they can then make decisions based on and do it through a variety. I mean, Bob Bottram added it in a variety of places through his implementation. So just look at the code associated with when the brain values are actually added back in. You'll see it in the bytecode implementation. You'll see it in various places through the simulation.
All right. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so yeah, I think I have everything I need right now.
Terrific. Well, it's been a real pleasure chatting, and
Likewise.
feel free to reach out because I really, really, really appreciate this work. I mean, literally, I'm just looking around my bookshelf with regards to the number of books I have on this. Okay, I've got like 5 that I can count immediately. So, yeah, this has been a big project for me for a long time, and I just haven't had the bandwidth to do it. So I really, really, really appreciate all your efforts here.
Don't worry about it. Just hopefully I can give you something you'll enjoy.
Well, between you, me, and Peter, I think we've got a good team working on this.
All right, cool. Okay, so yeah, thank you thank you so much for having this talk with me.
Most definitely. Look forward to talking in the future. Whenever you need to have a chat, just let me know and I'll organize it like this.
Likewise. I hope this wasn't too late/early for you.
No, I've got a bunch of meetings today. It's fitting in the meetings that I have. So the fact that we've got it done a little early is probably better for me too. So thank you very much for that.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so I hope you have a nice rest of the day then.
Similarly, I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Right. Thank you. Take care.